From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today I'll be reviewing the movie V, released in 1967. Please forgive me in advance for any horrible mispronunciations I may make in the video. The synopsis is a seminary student commits a violent crime and is forced to pray over the dead body of his victim for 3 nights, withstanding many horrors. The story, V, otherwise known as Spirit of Evil, is a novel by Ukrainian-born author Nikolai Gogol, based on the summoning of an evil demon that settles a score between a witch and a seminary student. It was first published in Volume 1 of his collection of tales, Murgarod, in 1835. Gogol said that the story was based on folklore, and he tells the story as it was told to him. However, it's generally agreed that no one ever heard of the story until he told it. The movie is an adaptation of Gogol's story, directed by Konstantin Yursov and Georgy Kopachov, based on a screenplay written by the 2 directors along with Alexei Patushko. Some people have claimed that Alexander was the true director of this film and is really the one responsible for its visuals. He was often called the Soviet version of Ray Harryhausen. It was distributed by Mosfilm and was the first Soviet-era horror film to be officially released in Russia. The story is pretty simple and very mysterious. Part of the mystery exists because the film is more visual than explicative. You really have to keep your eyes glued to the screen to get what's all happening. The version of the film that I watched was in Russian, so part of paying super attention to it was to watch the captioning very closely. I do have to say that this version helps you appreciate the acting more. So if you do find this kind of film interesting, then I would recommend watching it with the captions. At 1 hour and 17 minutes, it's short and sweet, but you get the idea that the story could have been trimmed even more. What you do get is so great though. Wow, this movie really impressed me. I was actually tipped off about this movie a few years ago by a tweet and have been obsessed with it ever since. Let me just set up the story for you. A class of seminary students are sent home for vacation. They all are indeed just students because they are the terrors of the town that they're in, stealing, drinking, and committing a lot of crimes. It's horrible. But they don't show you the details of it. They just imply what happens in the story. I started laughing immediately because it may have been a statement that Nikolai Gogol wanted to press in the story about the irony that we have these students who are learning about moral piety and they're really not applying any of it to the real world where it really counts. I knew that I was in for a treat, and boy was I ever. One of the worst of the hypocrites of the bunch is Korma Brutus, nicknamed the Philosopher, played wonderfully by Leonard Kurevlov, who gets lost with other students. As luck would have it, Vedma, an old witch, clearly played by a man, actor Nikolay Kutsov, agrees to let them sleep in separate areas of her property. Koma was set to sleep in her barn overnight. During the night, he thought that she was trying to seduce him, but she put him in a trance so that she could climb on his back and fly through the night sky until the morning. And yes, this is super, super weird, guys. And the way it's shot is actually really a serene moment that Vedma is clearly enjoying. It's really quite interesting that we have some violations happening earlier in the story, and now we have Vedma pretty much violating Koma to do her bidding for her by using him in this way to be a flying object. Of course, a crime was committed on Koma, but when he lands, Koma discovers what's happening and is enraged to the point that he beats Vedma nearly to death with a stick. Vedma is transformed into Panochka, a young unmarried woman played by Natalia Varley, who had been fatally wounded during the beating. He could have been absolved of his mistake if he took responsibility for his action. But he doesn't. He runs as fast as he possibly could away without even trying to help the dying girl. He demonstrates no remorse, avoiding his responsibility in the matter completely. Koma made it back to the seminary early, thinking that he got away with murder. The headmaster told him that a dying girl in a nearby Cossack village requested Koma by name to pray over her for 3 nights. Immediately he knew something was wrong and made several comedic attempts to get out of it, but to no avail. This is very interesting how this is all playing out, and I'm going through the play-by-play with you to accentuate just how interesting and detailed this character is, and this character study that is displayed in the movie. When he gets to the village, he realizes that the girl is the same Panochka that he brutalized earlier. It turns out that she is the daughter of Sotnik, played by Alexei Grazvin, a very wealthy man shrouded in his own mystery, but you get the grieving countenance in his performance. He has his suspicions about Koma, but doesn't really know what happened to his daughter. His sincerity in honoring his daughter's last wish to have Koma perform these nightly ceremonies is palpable, but he is not a nice guy. At one point, he threatens Koma with 1,000 lashes if he doesn't do as he's told. If he does it, he will get 1,000 coins. So there's a motivation for Koma to stay as well. For 3 nights, Koma prays over the girl in a locked, decrepit chapel. And each night, the threat grows more and more until she finally gets him. The background to the story is that we do get a scene where 2 villagers are talking and reveal that they feel some remorse for the girl and say that she was cursed. At the end, she turns into Vedma as her final form before laying to rest. The question is, was she always the old woman all along, or is her appearance the result of the dark arts? At first, I doubted that she was really Sotnik's daughter, but Alexei's performance of concern and anger, I would say that he really was her father. I always wondered if Sotnik and the town may be under a curse too. Who knows? And I love the fact that we are left in the dark about that. I mean, I could use a few answers though, but it doesn't kill the story that there isn't any explanation. We're left to our own imaginations. The Cossacks also told him about a huntsman who fell in love with Panochka. Well, it's easy because she's absolutely gorgeous. He was actually into some wild stuff and asked if she could ride his back like a horse, which is a lot like what Vedma did to Koma. Was she choosing Koma as her boyfriend at the barn? So it's also very interesting, wild, and unusual. This could be a metaphor for something that Nikolai Gogol couldn't talk about right out in the open in 1835, you know? Wink, wink. From the book, the huntsman died from exhaustion. Now, the book has more to offer. The book says that another man had his infant's blood sucked from the throat, and his wife was killed as Panochka growled like a dog. It's possible that she has been terrorizing the entire town, and this was either their way of getting out of this mess, or maybe this is just a thing that they continue to do over and over again. During the nights is only when he prays and she awakens. It seems that she cannot see, but she can hear. One little detail that I did notice: when the town announces that Panochka is dead, they all tell each other to be quiet. And I think they say that because she'll come back to terrorize them if she can hear them. Koma could have spent his nights perfectly quiet and possibly survived, maybe, but that's just a theory. Now, I'd like to talk about the nights separately here. Koma's first night events really occur about the 40-minute mark. So they try to set everything up for you in the first 40 minutes, and then it just goes crazy. And I love it. Once Koma begins to recite his prayers, Panochka awakens. In order to protect himself, Koma draws a protective circle which she cannot penetrate. This is a very important part of the plot because much of the time Panochka is trying to break the barrier of the circle, and it's visually stunning. Natalia Varley skillfully portrays the physical miming as if there was an invisible wall so well. It's very believable. And Panochka, as beautiful as she is, and I mean drop dead gorgeous, has a wild intensity in her eyes that is unwavering. It shakes you from within. There is something so scary about her presence at trying to get at Koma. The thrills of the music, the spinning camera work, and the visual effects are impeccably at work here with wondrous simplicity, right? This whole thing is done simply. And at one point she's flying around the room on a coffin, and it's just one of the grandest images that you can see, considering that these effects are not easy to pull off because they are effects that are eye-catching, and you'll always remember these effects, and they are all practical. They are all practical effects, and they work beautifully in this story. It's wonderful. V, the titular character, was saved for the last night of prayers, wherewithin Panochka calls upon all of the creatures of darkness to help her take revenge on Koma. And boy, was it a showstopper where all of the monsters literally came out of the woodwork. I mean, literally came out of the woodwork. And it's a thing of beauty. And there's a bit of schlock to it, but it's also done, like I said, low tech, using the period as a way to affect the story. The monster V is actually the king of gnomes and is some sort of boss level demon that has extra long eyelids. So they, I know, strange. They are so long that he needs the lesser demons to lift them. His vision allows the other demons to find Koma and penetrate his protective circle. This is also a black comedy in the way that Koma is a bit dopey, even though the topic is pretty serious. Leonid Kurylov plays the character as lovable as he can so that the audience isn't exactly cheering for Panochka to get him. But truly, he is a terrible person. He lacks a moral center, so the whole time that this is happening, he is calling Panochka every name that he can think of and praying to God that he can be saved, but not one time did he ever apologize for committing murder or show remorse for the young girl. It has a deeper meaning as you think about the value of character and what it means to each of us. It's a classic lesson. Be a good person or you're doomed. The cool part of this film is the very end, showing Koma's two friends that were traveling with him in the beginning of the film, working as painters at the seminary. They are barely any better than Koma, drinking and lying. They hold up a drink in honor of their friend, and they offer two really cool ideas. One idea is that perhaps if Koma had more faith, he could have survived. The other theory is that perhaps Koma was still alive because we only see him lying on the floor at the end. There's no actual indication that he's dead. That's so cool. I actually love the uncertainty because it gives the film so much more afterlife. Please excuse the pun, but it is true. I am still thinking about this film Wow, what a joy to see this movie. It is something that you must see at least once. It's wonderful. I see echoes of films like The Exorcist, 1973, Life Force in 1985, The Gate, 1987, The Fearless Vampire Killers, released that same year in 1967, and many, many Hammer films from the 1970s. Directors like David Lynch and Guillermo del Toro come to mind when watching this as well. You will be able to see so many influences in this, and the color palette of this deep pale green, while Coma and Panochka remained in vibrant colors. The cinematic purity of this film makes it irresistibly rewatchable. It's a true retro movie lover's treat. My rating is an 8.7. Well, that sums up my review. I hoped you liked it, and if you did, I've got over 100 of these videos, so go on ahead and browse the channel to see more reviews from me like this. I also do live streams, so please do look out for those as well. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hit the bell icon to be the very first to be notified of my next video. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.